So on the opposite end of the spectrum, we've got a tense and fearful posture. And with the caveat that this dog is very thin, so we can just naturally see their bones and musculature a little bit easier, we are going to look for that kind of more compressed body, that like the muscles are tense, the muscles are taut. If we could watch this dog moving in space, it's likely that their gait would be very tense rather than kind of like loose and inefficient. Tail is often close to the body and maybe even tucked. And it's not super evident in this picture, but oftentimes, we talked a couple of slides ago about looking from a bird's eye view down at the spine for curve versus straight. We can also look at the spine head on the way that we are in this photo and look for an arched back versus a flat back. So this back is actually pretty flat, but oftentimes when we are seeing a fearful pup, we'll see more of that Halloween, like Black Cat on Halloween arched back. The dog may also physically freeze and not move. They may move very slowly or in a kind of an unnatural way, and they're probably going to avoid making eye contact with whatever the thing is that's scaring them. This isn't necessarily a linear progression, but for the purpose of learning the body postures, when we're kind of escalating from just a straight up fearful posture to we're now feeling like, okay, I need to actually be on the defensive here. That's when we start to see a little bit more of aggressive signaling. So this picture, I'm pretty sure this is like an AI image because this looks a little uncanny valley to me, but it does demonstrate, we still have a curved spine, compressed body posture. Dog is really like holding their body close together, but we're making eye contact with the thing and our head is slightly raised. So again, if we look here versus here, there's a pretty stark difference. And then moving more into offensive, aggressive posture. And these terms are kind of wiggle roomy, but I find them helpful to try to operationalize if we're trying to unpack, like if an incident happened and we're trying to unpack what happened with that animal, being able to look at some of these different factors. So you see here in this drawing, the weight is now shifted forward versus sort of back or centered. Tail is out. So this is another really important piece. We can't see the tail in this position, but if you compare this tail to this tail, right, we're now in a position where we are prepared to act if we need to because we are feeling threatened. Piloerection may also be visible. You may have heard this referred to as raised hackles. This happens most often between shoulder blades, but it can also extend all the way down to the base of the tail. And some dogs will even show piloerection along the length of the spine. And with the tail raised, it might be still or it might be kind of flicking back and forth in a little bit of a flagging motion. So I mentioned body weight a little bit already, forward versus centered versus back. This picture is a little bit more exaggerated where the body weight is forward and you can really just tell by looking. Most of the weight is on the front paws. We can imagine if someone were to drop this leash, this dog would go toward whatever they're looking at. So it's an indicator of where the dog wants to be in space, right? Which kind of makes sense. This picture, and these beagles actually come up again a little bit later in the presentation. I don't know what's going on with these beagles, but they appear to be more stressed than the photographer in Wikimedia Commons thought they were. Again, it's just a photo, so who knows what's going on, but there's some subtle stress signals here. We'll unpack some of this like paw lift, the ears, the tension in the mouth and the eyes, but right now let's just look at the body weight. So we're shifting back a little bit on these paws. We've got a little bit less weight on this, what is that, the left front paw. And then likewise for this dog, we're shifting away from the front paws as well. So it's a subtle shift, but these subtle shifts can be really useful to watch. And then I've got a video of centered body weight so you can get a sense of what that looks like in motion. So this is from a few years ago, my now late dog Ruby playing with the box, and this is one of her favorite things to do. So you'll see shifts back and forth, but for the most part, her weight is centered, and you also can kind of get an idea of what that loose, relaxed movement looks like.
Hey puppy, ready?
background noise to allow deeper thinking. And it goes on a little bit from there, but you get a good sense of that loose movement, again, the mostly centered body weight. And I think this is also a little bit of a hint that reading body language is hard, and we like to gravitate towards photos because it's just a stock, like, still image. But when are we ever, in a real life practical situation looking at photos? So I like to start to get practice early and often with video and kind of getting really comfortable with what these behaviors can look like on a real animal in real time. So one other thing to keep in mind is body adjustments, and whether it's due to, generations of selective breeding or cosmetic adjustments that folks might choose to make with an animal, there are going to be things that make certain parts of the body more difficult to read. A Dachshund, for example, their arched spine is going to look very different from a French bulldog. If we look at things like tails and ears, which of course we have not talked about yet, but these ears are going to function, the muscles might make similar movements as a dog with floppy ears, but it's going to look different on a dog with cropped ears, and similar with tail position. So we can imagine sort of where this tail might extend from, but we're only going off of what we can see. So this is, again, another plug for having multiple points of data when you're reviewing an animal's behavior and body language, because you might not always be able to rely on the thing that you're most comfortable with.